Greetings, everyone. Welcome to your Swedenborgian community online. Today we're talking about faith and what it really means to have it. Is it just an idea that you hold at heart? Is it an awareness of deeper truths? What is faith in a religious context, but also how does it apply to everything we think? Because, I think we can strive to be rational, we can strive to be scientific, but we're always trying to get a better understanding of the world around us. And ultimately, the book that we're covering by Emanuel Swedenborg is all about that type of rationality, not just taking religion for face value or even science and acknowledging that you always have room to grow. So, my name's Cory.
Hi, I'm Alyssa, and welcome. I'm so excited to get to talk today about faith and to dive deeper into another of Swedenborg's works.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Should we just jump in today?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, so if you remember where we left off, we were talking about blind faith. And Emanuel Swedenborg, this 18th century mystical Christian who wrote a lot of books, he doesn't believe blind faith is that healthy, or that it's faith at all.
Yeah. He views faith based in dogma or faith from a hierarchical faith isn't true faith because you're not using what he calls inner recognition to understand if that's something you actually believe.
Yeah, so inner recognition. And also, he talks a little bit about you should be able to have a rational understanding of it, as well as this inner recognition. And I haven't really quite gotten to the bottom of all of how he brings those two together. So maybe let's jump in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Great.
So starting at 10?
Yeah. Awesome.
Section 10 of faith. The Lord said to Thomas, "Because you have seen me, Thomas, you believed. Blessed are those who do not see, and yet they believe." John 20:29. This does not mean faith apart from an inner recognition of truth, but that people are blessed who do not see the Lord with their eyes as Thomas did, and who still believe he exists, because this recognition occurs in the light of truth from the Word.
So, if you could put that into your own words, what would you say?
I would say that Swedenborg is starting to talk about faith as something that we doesn't necessarily come from our senses. Thomas was one of the lucky ones who got to meet God incarnate, Jesus, and truly knows that God is real. And for most of us who've never had an encounter with God, although some people might, we just take it on belief, really. I think God shows up in different ways, but not always as flesh and bone as some are lucky to see.
Yeah, I guess if you see God in the flesh, healing people, like many of the disciples, it's probably a little different.
Yeah.
But Swedenborg makes this interesting point about miracles, and that when you see a miracle, you're almost forced to believe. And he didn't think that was the healthiest type of faith.
Yeah.
Which relates to that quote where Jesus said, blessed are those who have not seen and believe. It's kind of like, I don't know, people relate it to a country you've never been to. It's like you haven't been there, but others have. A lot of people would counter, well, a lot of people have been to that country, or there are a lot of people there.
Yeah.
So how would you connect that to your belief in God? I guess people have had experiences of God. Maybe you've even had experiences of God, but it's not quite flesh on the bone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's something to think about if you have a belief.
Yeah. I mean, one of the big questions I find people who are struggling with their belief often ask is, why doesn't God just show up and show himself or herself and make everybody believe? But I don't think that's, like Swedenborg would say, I don't think that's healthy. I think there's something pure and delightful about developing a relationship with God when you've never really seen God in flesh. I think it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, can I read the next part?
Yeah, 11.
Since faith is an inner recognition that something is true, and since faith and truth are one and the same, as noted above, it follows that an outward recognition without an inner one is not faith, and that being convinced of something false is not faith. An outer recognition apart from an inner one is faith in the unknown, and faith in the unknown is nothing but information held in our memory that becomes a conviction if there are arguments to support it. So you're recognizing it outwardly, maybe even kind of like your outward mind, like in your memory, but not in like the recesses of your soul or the recesses of your mind with that deep inner recognition. Because he's saying it's just information held in your memory, and then it becomes a conviction if you argue about it and have arguments about it, or have like reasons why in your memory. Such as, this is what my family believes, and I want to defend it for this reason, or maybe even this is why I think that, I'm not sure. I'll finish 11. People who hold to such convictions think something is true because someone else has said so, or believe it is true because they have convinced themselves. Yet it is as easy to convince ourselves of something false as it is of something true, and sometimes such a conviction is even stronger. Yeah. We're seeing an element of that in politics today.
Yes.
Yeah.
People can be pretty stubborn. Once they firmly believe something is fact, they'll stick to the guns, even when it might seem easy to parse their truth, see through the cracks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think often people don't care if something's actually true. They become convinced that they want to listen to a specific leader, and then, or their party, and then no matter what is said, if it kind of follows whatever groove they're in that party, they're going to believe it as fact, without any real care if it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing to start to realize, especially as we talk about faith, is that having that question in your mind, like, is this something I'm just holding on to because of someone told me it, or because I have these ideas about how it should be?
Yeah.
Like, that questioning is actually a really healthy part of faith.
Yeah, and how often do I check my sources? Like, maybe I listen to news channel, XYZ, but I'm always listening to XYZ, and I always believe them. Like, how often do I actually go and really do some research, look at quotes, follow through? Even just every once in a while, it can open our eyes to whether or not that news source is being honest. And it could feel like someone as close to you as your parents, right? Like, you wouldn't really want to question certain people that we like to listen to, but it's healthy, I think.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not quite done.
Oh.
Thinking something is true because we have convinced ourselves of it means thinking what someone else has said is true and looking for support for it without first examining it for ourselves. Oh, he just kind of encapsulated what we said.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, it's good to examine it.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Section 12. Some may think to themselves or say to themselves, who is capable of having the inner recognition of truth that is faith? Not I. I will tell them how they can. Turn your back on evils because they are sins, and turn to the Lord, and you will have as much of that inner recognition as you wish.
Wow.
Yeah.
So turn your back on evil, because it's evil, it's hurting people, it sins, miss the mark, and believe in divinity, believe in the Lord. Yeah.
I like that he's ending this part, so the first 12 sections are one part, and he's ending it by turning towards God. Like, if you're wanting more of something, a God quality, all you have to do is ask.
Yeah, not even just ask, but if you turn towards God,
you
receive essentially more of God's, well, in this case, ability to perceive deeper truths, perceive if things are true.
Yeah, I think that's why I noticed that days when I feel more in communion with God, like listening and reflecting on and centering on God, my intuition seems a little bit more like stronger.
Yeah.
Like I'll hear that inner voice say, maybe that's a good thing to do today, or maybe that's not. And like really starting to listen to the voice of God that shows up as I center my thoughts and presence on God. And I find in the whole process a lot more joy, which is cool.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I can't say it's my experience is the same, but I notice when I focus on God too, I'm way more peaceful and generally happier, but I tend to be less fearful. So he doesn't really talk about it in this, but in a lot of other religious texts, the Bible, even the Sikh text, talks a lot about worship the fearless one and you will be without fear. So it kind of falls into worship the one who knows everything and you'll start seeing deeper into truths, you know. And it's interesting.
I think that's cool.
Yeah. And it's curious because there's a lot of things that we feel we lack in today's world, and maybe we've lost someone we love and we're grieving, or we don't feel like we'll find the happiness or joy that we long for. And often we find kind of somewhat destructive habits that culture tends to support, whether it's, a lot of lust and pornography and all these things. But it can be anything. We can be addicted and lustful towards food, towards visual things, towards audio things.
Yeah. Towards relationships.
Like deeply attached, etc.
Yeah.
And turning towards God, the source of all the things, all the goodness, all the wonderfulness that you see in that, but even like a deeper, root of it, a deeper root of peace, allows you to find it even when you feel like you've lost the source of it, because God's always with us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. So this next section is titled The Inner Recognition of Truth, that is, faith is found only in people who are devoted to caring.
Devoted to caring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's cool because he's pointing towards the action part of faith. Because I don't believe faith is just something you experience and know. I think it's something that also is an action word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, faith has to be put into act. And he's saying the act of faith is caring in act, essentially.
Yeah.
So you have to be devoted to caring to have faith. Let's find out more about it.
Awesome. So section 13. Having just said what faith is, I need now to say what caring is. Caring originates in a desire to do something good. Since what is good loves what is true, this desire leads to a desire for truth and therefore the recognition of what is true, which is faith. By these steps, in proper sequence, a desire to do something good takes form and turns into caring. This is how caring develops from its origin, which is a desire to do something good through faith, which is the recognition of what is true, to its goal, which is caring, the goal of doing something.
Can you read that last couple sentences again?
Yeah, I feel often Swedenborg talks in circles to prove a point. You can tell he's a scientist.
Yeah. Well, for those who don't know, Swedenborg spent most of his life as a scientist, publishing a ton of books, many of which are really advanced for his day. This was early 1700s, so 18th century. And it's funny because a lot of his books were so advanced that some of his theories about the brain and other things have only been verified in the last 50 years or so. Psychological things even, more recently in a lot of ways. And so if you look up neuronal theory, like neurons in your brain, and if you look up the theory about how the solar system formed, the nebular hypothesis, you'll see that Swedenborg's mentioned in those because he was one of the earliest, if not the earliest, theorizer about those things. And neuron, I'm sure he's first. Even how the solar system was formed, if you used to take a class in this, you'd hear these other names. And I don't know exactly why, like Kant and Laplace, but it's been kind of reflected upon and modified to say, oh, actually Swedenborg was decades before these other scientists with these things. So it's interesting that towards the end of his life, he became much more spiritual and connected to God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you start to read his, spiritual books, you definitely can tell there's a scientist writing it and how he talks. I think it's cool, actually. All right, so backing up just a little bit. By these steps in proper sequence, a desire to do something good takes form and turns into caring. This is how caring develops from its origin, which is a desire to do something good through faith, which is a recognition of what is true, to its goal, which is caring, the goal of doing something.
Nice.
So I've been reading the book Tao of Pooh lately. And nice. For some reason, this makes me think of Pooh Bear, which is the character which they're talking about, represents the quality of Tao, which is just sort of going with where God takes you, honestly. Nice.
So the character from Christopher Robin, Pooh, represents following the way, following the Lord.
Yeah. And I think as Swedenborg is talking about wanting to do something that's good because of the faith you have, and that means you are taking caring actions and you tend to just make kinder choices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think often we don't think about faith that way, that its root, and I think this is very much verified in most scriptures, this root of why God is with us and what God wants to uplift in us is care for each other.
Yeah.
Love of the neighbor, love our enemies, uplifting, looking at other life and wanting to empower it, not to dominate and control.
Yeah.
Although some veins of religion kind of take it that way, a lot of scriptures, world scriptures, talk about the responsibility humanity has and that we shouldn't look at things as if we were here to just own them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this care, God cares about us. God cares about life, which is why God created life or created the universe and uplifted life through it. Yeah, it's interesting. That's something we forget about.
Yeah.
And then we make faith more about kind of ourselves. If you're, we...
I check the box. I believe in this particular name of Jesus or whatever.
Yeah, we have a very specific, if you're in my religion, you're okay. The more you're like me, the more okay you are, essentially. Otherwise, you might be going to hell or you are going to hell.
Yeah. And
if our kids or someone find a different spiritual path or religion, our neighbors that seem so wonderful or whatever, but they're in another religion, we think or we're told they're going to hell. Whereas really we should be seeking to see the heaven in them and care for it, care for them.
Yeah.
Care for them as images and likenesses of God, essentially.
That's awesome. There's one little last paragraph of section 13. It says, we can see from this how love, which is a desire to do something good, brings forth faith, which is the same as recognizing what is true. And by this means brings forth caring, which is the same as love acting through faith.
Yeah, so the source of even having faith is wanting to be loving, like a true faith.
Yeah. It's like love of God, and love of God and others.
Yeah, loving love. Yeah, being loving. That's interesting.
That's neat.
Yeah, you want to keep going?
Yeah, you want to read it start 14?
14. To put it more clearly, a thing that is good must be of use. So the origin of caring is wanting to be of use. And since usefulness loves the means of being of use, it prompts a desire for those means and leads to recognition of them. So by the steps in this sequence, wanting to be of use takes visible form and becomes caring. So you want to be of use, and that leads to caring?
Yeah. I think that's an interesting thing in light of all the happening right now, and with people still in quarantine, and a lot of people have lost their jobs.
Yeah.
Like this idea, like not feeling of use, because we had so much going on, and having to learn about ourselves, what it means to be useful, without a job necessarily.
Well, and often I think we took it too far, and we said people have to work so much to really give, to really deserve their pay.
Yeah.
Whereas I think we've found, if you look at the numbers, as countries, we produce a lot, especially in the West.
That's true.
But the pay is not equitable to how much each person contributes to a company.
Yeah.
Most of the pay, most of the produce and the sales of the produce kind of accumulate at the top. And really, people working in a company bring a lot to it. You can't have it without those folks. You may be able to replace them, but you still have to have that person there. And they're not getting paid well enough. And so now when we're losing our jobs and companies are still being kind of selfish and trying to save as much money as possible, despite, a lot of our executives still being super rich, we really feel that pain.
Yeah.
And so it questions like our typical idea of usefulness.
That's true.
Is it really about just being so productive and, in this dog-eat-dog world?
Yeah.
Or is it something else? And like maybe just being yourself and uplifting life and humanity and your family and community is good enough, and maybe that takes different forms.
Yeah, I would definitely say that the being useful means you help the economy, you make money, whatever, isn't really God-centered. It's missing the love part of wanting to be useful.
Yeah.
And so actually, in a lot of ways, the blessing of a quarantine is that we are forced to reevaluate all that and realize what's important, which is the caring of the actual people and caring of the earth.
Yeah.
And it's the care and not the use without care that's important.
Yeah, the care, the love.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, yeah, you're right. Like tying usefulness to love is essentially what he's saying. They have to be tied together and not just be about profit. Profit for who, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So, did I finish that section?
Yes, you did.
Nice.
All right, so section 15. It's another long one, so we'll do it in a few parts. This sequence is like the sequence of everything that starts in our will and moves through our understanding into the actions of our bodies. Our will accomplishes nothing on its own apart from our understanding, nor does our understanding on its own apart from our will. We need to act together for anything to happen.
Yeah, so your will and understanding works together. And I think we can understand that through reflecting on how we always want to do something before we do it or learn how to do it. Like you have to want to stand up as a baby. You have to want to walk. You have to want to talk.
Yeah.
There has to be a draw. Otherwise, you're never going to learn. Even when we do things we don't want to do, it tends to be because we love things that'll bring for us.
Yeah.
You know.
And understanding without actually doing it is kind of empty. It's like I understand how to drive a stick shift. Does not mean I would actually do it well.
Yeah, and you'll never try because you don't care enough.
Yeah, that's true too. I don't have a reason to know how to drive stick shift.
Yeah. Well, I don't. Is he still making stick shift cars? Of course, like sports cars.
I have
Or
no
stick
idea.
shifts.
I don't think I'd buy one intentionally.
Yeah.
All right. That is to say, a motivating feeling that comes from our will has no effect on its own except by means of thought, which is an activity of our faculty of understanding. And the converse holds true as well. They must act together for anything to happen. Think it through. If you empty thinking of any feeling that comes from love, can you think? Or by the same token, if you derive a motivating feeling of its thought, can you accomplish anything? Or again, if you empty thought of its motivating feelings, can you talk? Or if you deprive a motivating feeling of its thinking or understanding, can you do anything? This is how it is with caring and faith. Nice. I like all these questions.
So he's hammering it home. These things go together for clear reasons.
Yeah.
At least of true faith is paired with caring.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Nice.
All right.
All right. You want to read the next 16?
Sure.
Yay.
Comparison with a tree may serve to illustrate this.
Oh, a tree?
A tree.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
Trees are amazing.
I feel like I've heard of trees.
They're the tall ones.
Oh, yes. I feel like I've been called tree before. In its first origin, a tree is a seed in which there is a drive to produce fruit. Okay. There's a drive to produce fruit from
a seed. Makes sense.
Kind of makes sense, yeah. Stimulated by warmth, this drive first produces roots. And then from the roots, a shoot or stem with branches, leaves, and finally fruit. Mm-hmm. That is how the drive to produce fruit manifests itself. We can see from this that the drive to produce fruit is constant throughout the whole process until it becomes manifest. Since if it were to fail, the power to grow would promptly die. Mm. This is how the illustration works. The tree is the person. Our drive to produce the means to an end comes from our will and passes into our understanding. Mm-hmm. Our shoot or stem and its branches and leaves are the means we use, means called the truths that belong to religious faith. So we use the truths that belong to religious faith to what? The fruits, which in the case of the tree are the final effects of its drive to be fruitful, are in our case the useful acts in which our will becomes manifest. Mm. We can see from this that our will to be of service by using our understanding is constant throughout the whole process until finally it becomes manifest.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that Swedenborg takes nature examples to help us understand because that's, I think, where I understand God more and more is by looking at nature. Mm. So I appreciate the tree example. I also appreciate that in reality, this whole cycle of the tree, so the whole cycle of faith and caring, repeats itself again. Because there's fruit, and then from that fruit comes another seed to start the whole process again in new ways and different trees, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool. When it leads, and that's part of the fruit, kind of the part of the usefulness of being fruitful is promoting the human race or promoting life.
Yeah.
So usefulness, like every part of the fruit's about promoting life. Like whether it's the seed, which promotes your own offspring, or the offspring of your species, and then fruit, which feeds things around, which does help your own race or your own line, but also helps that life.
Yeah.
And as we know of trees, Swedenborg won't get into it to this level, but we know nowadays there's like a whole ecosystem that supports a tree growing and fruiting.
Yeah.
Of course, the dirt is really a very diverse substance of many different parts, and so there's nutrients, but there's also things like mycelial from fungi, from mushrooms, that make the whole process work. And we didn't really know that very well until the last couple of years, that mycelial from mushrooms allows like nutrients to be absorbed by roots, and there's a whole communication and all this stuff going on.
Yeah.
Between plants, yeah.
I think that's cool. It's a reminder that we're not doing it like all of this that Swedenborg's talking about, faith and action of that faith. We don't do it alone. We do it in community, and we do it from divinity, and yeah. And if we were alone, I don't think it would happen nearly at all.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and just realizing that it takes some of those different like characters, those different parts of the community that aren't technically the tree, to allow the tree to even grow, is mind opening, because we don't always think about that in our communities, but it's clearly true. Well, first of all, we depend on that ecosystem, so we're part of it, just within trees or with plant life and animals, but also in our communities, how much we depend on each other for roads and systems that serve us. Yeah. And so there's no such thing as picking ourselves up by the bootstraps, right?
Yeah, very true.
No. Although I guess technically, no, that would be impossible, right? Pick yourself up by the bootstraps.
Very literally impossible.
You just flip and land on the ground. You can't even do it literally.
Oh, that's funny. All right. 17. We can see from what has now been said that caring, to the extent that it is a prompting to do something good, something of use, brings forth faith as a means through which it becomes manifest. This means that to bring forth something of use, caring and faith must act together. It also means that faith does not accomplish anything good or useful by itself, but only from caring as its source. Faith, in fact, is just caring in the middle phase. So it's a fallacy to think that faith brings forth what is good the way a tree brings forth fruit. The tree is not faith, the tree is the person. That's interesting.
What'd you get out of it?
Well, I'm reminded growing up about how in church, I went to a Baptist church, and in church, they would talk about faith would be the faith means you're right with God, and also it somehow makes you want to do good things, but there was never an explanation as to why you would therefore want to create good action if you believed in God.
Yeah, it's kind of like saying faith will bring good works.
Yeah.
Whereas I think he's saying these things have to come together, or your heart has to come with faith, leads to faith, which leads to good works, in a sense. So in a way it's similar, but I feel like, I also grew up in a Baptist church and Salvation Army too. And yeah, it always seemed like to put the cart before the horse.
Yeah. Because,
your faith was the biggest thing, because that got you into heaven. And then, you do good things. But it always seemed like that was less emphasized. Of course, the Salvation Army does a lot of good work.
It's true,
I'm sure the Baptist church does as well. But often when we make it all about faith, well, first of all, how caring is that faith? How open and how truly loving is it? Because often it says, if you're not in our box, you're going to burn forever.
And that doesn't seem very caring.
Yeah, that's a very specific way to read Scripture. It's not, the Scripture doesn't paint it exactly in those terms, but that's how we decide to interpret it. It actually seems to, because that's kind of what we want. We want to be insular often. We often want to use whatever our religion is or our worldview to dominate and control. We see it in politics and science. I mean, look at what's happening with archaeology and things like that. We see it all over the place, and that's kind of the human condition to want to be selfish often.
Yeah.
And most religion is actually about shirking that. But that doesn't mean we can't use that religion and do exactly that.
Oh, I like that Swedenborg is talking about that the important thing is not the faith, because the tree is not faith. The tree is person, and that that's faith and caring and all these things combined through divinity. That is what matters and why good things are important to do. And
yeah, and it kind of makes the tree whole.
Yeah.
Because in this example, this tree truly has faith out of love, and that allows it to fruit. And it's interesting because Swedenborg often relates becoming truly human to actually having a real faith in divinity, in truth, and wanting to be of use and fruiting in that way.
Yeah.
He says a lot of people seem to be of use, or they're getting a lot done, but because their actions don't come from a true love of other people, of God, it all just serves themselves. So it might serve people in a sense, but they themselves aren't being useful like, in the act of what it means to be useful and loving and caring and to have faith.
18. It is important to know that caring and faith are united in the same way that our will and our understanding are united. Since our will is the part of us that cares and our understanding is the part of us that has faith. It is also important to know that caring and faith are united in the same way our desire and our thinking are united. Since our will is part of us that feels desire and our understanding is part of us that thinks. And again, caring and faith are united in the same way that goodness and truth are united. Since what is good is the object of desire in our will, and what is true is the object of the thinking in our understanding. In short, I don't know if Swedenborg could be short.
Well, he's going to summarize that.
In short, caring and faith are united in the same way that essence and form are united, because essence of faith is caring, and the form of caring is faith. So we can see that faith without caring is like a form with no essence, which is nothing, and that caring without faith is like an essence with no form, which is also nothing.
Yeah, so like the essence is the love, like the kind of like what you want to do, what you want to be embodied around you. And then the form is what form do you take to get it done.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the human body, you can't say, well, you can't really divide the two, although you can think about them separately. Like the human wants to be alive in a sense, and the body allows it to be.
Yeah.
And then it does things with that body to continue living and to promote whatever else it's about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually really cool that Swedenborg gives so many examples of how these like different elements go together.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to give those examples so that more and more people can understand.
Yeah.
So it's nice that he's long-winded.
Yeah, well, even when he tries not to be, to your point, he starts talking about essences and forms. So. Which
is cool. I think I like the idea of it, comparing it to these sort of scientific things again.
Yeah.
And that, you can't just have an element without its form. Like the form is just as important as what it's made of. Which is why water has so many different forms.
Well, I think especially when we're relating it to our lives, like we can definitely relate to that cycle because that's what we know in the material realm. Like the drum has a certain form and we, and we have a form and et cetera. But I like when he's kind of tying it back almost to a spiritual form because you couldn't say like this human's human and this one's not really. You couldn't say that, but you could say this one is acting from like a distorted thing that's not really faith because they just want to hurt people. Like maybe they're, who knows, like we could take it to an extreme, like maybe they're a serial killer or whatever.
Yeah.
And everything they do is about their love. They're still that essence. The form they take and the understanding that they use is kind of that essence and act.
Yeah.
And then they act on it, and that leads to it proliferating. So there's still kind of that process.
Yeah.
But to him, that being kind of selling itself short, as he'll probably explore in this book and maybe definitely does in other books, like to truly find the peace and joy and all those things of being human that we're meant to have, we have to kind of start turning away from evil, as he said earlier, because they're evil and they're destructive, and turning towards caring, turning towards love of God and the Lord, which is essentially all the goodness in life in all things.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads to the love of the neighbor and the love of our environment and earth.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah. I think that's awesome.
Cool. Let's keep going.
All right. All right. We'll break this next section 19 up into a couple of parts. Our caring and faith work exactly the same way as the motion of the heart that we call systole and diastole, and the motion of the lung that we call breathing. There is also a complete correspondence between these motions and our will and understanding, and therefore our caring and faith, which is why will and its motivating feelings are meant by the heart in the word, and understanding it's thinking by the breath in the word, and also by the spirit.
So he's talking about the symbolism in Scripture, relate of what breathing is and air, and all these other things relate to what they are symbolically in a being.
Yeah, which is so cool. So breathing one last breath is no longer living, and giving up the ghost is no longer breathing.
Huh.
I didn't know giving up the ghost was a phrase back then. That's cool. Well,
yeah.
Whatever.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think it's interesting to start to compare it to how our human body works.
Yeah.
Because there are these elements of our blood and how it's important, like our cardiovascular system needs both the heart to work and the lungs, and they each do a process for the body, which is cool.
Yeah, they together essentially craft the whole body. Like I think we start essentially with what our heart in the womb.
I didn't know that.
Something like that. It helps to grow the brain
cool.
early. And then, because the heart pumps all the fluids around and all the nutrients and characters, all the workers.
All the attitude.
And the air, of course, is useful in that process. And necessary in that process. And so those two things together. Yeah, and I think he likes to relate it to what's driving the process.
Yeah.
So, like, the heart is driving this movement. And so he's relating that to caring and love. And it's funny enough, we do too, right?
Yeah.
In our everyday parlance, we say, what's in your heart? And he's kind of pointing out that symbolism has a reason. You know, the heart drives this and moves things around. And also that it's used in Scripture that way. So maybe that's another reason we use it in how we talk. Although, many of us try to read the Bible as literally as possible. At least we say we do. But then we read Moses and we pull out, what is this story telling us about our lives? Then we read Jesus's parables, which are definitely not supposed to be taken literally. And we definitely say, okay, what is he trying to tell us about our spiritual lives and growth? And Swedenborg, as you probably know or are learning, he reads all of Scripture that way because to him, Jesus is God in the flesh, the one personhood of God. And so even the Genesis creation story is a parable of spiritual life.
Mm-hmm.
All the books of the Bible, and they're not every book of the Bible, so that may rub some of you the wrong way, but all the books of the Bible, which are most of them that he took as scripture,
Mm-hmm.
have this parable nature. So things like, Paul's letters, he's like, this is Paul's letters. They're really helpful and insightful, just like my writing is, says Swedenborg, right? But they're not scripture.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not that he disliked Paul. It's just, if you're writing a letter to the Corinthians, it's not the same as a symbolic story from Christ.
Yeah.
So I can relate to that. Cool, yeah. I find it interesting as well.
Yeah. So it follows then that there can be no faith without caring, or caring without faith, and that faith without caring is like breathing of the lungs without a heart. This is impossible for any living creature. Only an automaton could do it. Caring without faith is like having a heart but no lungs, in which case we have no awareness that we are alive. So caring does useful things by means of faith, the way the heart accomplishes action by means of the lungs.
It's interesting that he relates breathing so closely to thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And although I think from a scientific lens, of course breathing is necessary for thinking, but it's necessary for a lot of our cells processing.
Yeah.
My question would be, is the process of using oxygen in a cell similar to thinking in some way?
Mm-hmm.
But, maybe more relatable is like we often think about breathing when we think about meditation. And that's often what people will say to focus on, to calm our thinking, to turn to a deeper place of contemplation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that Swedenborg relates it in a similar way. Of course, he was quite a meditator. But
I think this is probably one of my favorite Swedenborg books, I guess.
Yeah.
Because he really does a great job at bringing in outside things to help us better understand what he's talking about. And giving examples. And ones that I really personally connect with, like body science examples and the nature. So I think it's really cool and a great way to understand.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, bringing in the body and nature.
Mm-hmm.
Quite relatable for you. Hope you find it the same way. In fact, when we ask each other, like, what do we think of this section? And when we explore, we're curious what you think. It doesn't have to agree with us. We all kind of have our own walk in this world with spirituality, faith, religion, rationality. All the things, in a sense, are meant by the word in Scripture. And so we're curious what you think and what your journey has been so far as we go along. So be sure to comment or reach out to us as you can. Should we keep going?
Yeah, finish this section out.
The likeness between heart and caring on the one hand and lungs and faith on the other is so strong that in the spiritual world everyone can tell simply from people's breathing what their faith is like. And from their heartbeat what their caring is like. It's interesting. We can kind of relate to that, I think.
Yeah. Angels
and spirits live by heartbeat and breathing just as we do, which is why they feel, think, act, and talk as we do in the world. And that brings up a nice little side topic, which is angelic or spiritual bodies.
Yes. I think from when you dove into heaven and hell, we started to learn, and Swedenborg explains that angels' spiritual self is their outer self. It's the self that you see, and so different clothing will represent different qualities of self, and different houses will represent the difference of the spirit. And I think that's really delightful. I wish sometimes it would be that simple nowadays to be able to know exactly who someone is based on, how they speak and what their heart sounds like.
Yeah, you can figure out some of those things. It's just more subtle.
It is.
Like,
it's hard work sometimes.
Yeah. Well, like as they say, like if you know someone's heartbeat and pupil dilation and breathing, you can tell if they're lying.
Yeah, that's true.
that's why we hook people up to lie detectors, and well, that kind of goes to skin conductivity and the heartbeat. But it's interesting that there's a slight correspondence, but you're right, you can't really tell. You can tell some things. I mean, you can tell, how much they work on their appearance, or how much they let their appearance go, like in different ways or different, methods. And the more you learn about them, the more you can see why they're doing those things.
Yeah.
And often it can't point to either positive or negative qualities.
That's true. But,
we're complex beings, so we all have our habits that we're working on. But yeah, it'd be nice if we could just look at someone's body and house and know about them. But I think even more specifically for Swedenborg, it's less about always knowing what other people are doing and more about, I don't know, just being in the realness of your life and being called to like higher living. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I would definitely say Swedenborg is more like, when he talks about these things, it's as a means to help individuals sort of parse their own life and think about, well, is God active in this part? Is my faith really attached to my caring in the ways that it should be? I think using Swedenborg's theological explorations and pairing it with biblical, scriptural elements is a great way to start gaining and allowing for God's wisdom to help guide you. And it's not an easy process. It never is.
Yeah, I think it's more easy the more you turn to God with it in moment to moment. At least it feels more peaceful, the process. Yeah. It may still take your entire life. But to explain to folks like what we are talking about when we talk about spiritual bodies, Swedenborg believed that in the next life, as a spirit, as an angel in heaven, because he believed all angels were just, people who've passed on, whether from this planet or another planet, and have gone to heaven. Your bodies and your environment represent your type of heaven, like your inner connection with God and life with God and your communities. So heaven is very diverse in Swedenborg's visions of it.
Just like our world is.
Yeah, just like our world is. And he believed the more diverse a community and the more it was working together out of care and love, the more perfect it was. Kind of like the ecosystem that allows for a tree. You couldn't have a tree if it were just a tree. It takes those different characters, those different actors to live. And same with humanity. Although I think now that we're here, we feel like we could kind of live without these things. Clearly not. And the more we destroy of it, I think the harder we'll find being human to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it delights me a little bit to think that heaven is continually getting more perfect. Not that it wasn't perfect before, but it continues to be better.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, as we turn more and more to God, we see that growth in ourselves. That more and more of heaven, more and more of divinity can grow and flourish. And you see the flowers of divine love growing in your own soul as you continue to dance with God, as I like to put it.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about, you can have perfection, which is heaven, which is God with all the people in heaven.
Yeah.
And then, and God in their hearts, around them, in other people, through other people. But yeah, the more you add, the more perfect. It's kind of like the difference between infinity, like in one sense, and infinity in another sense. So bear with me. Like, between like the numbers 0 and 1, you can write 0.000000001. You can do that forever. You can just keep adding 1 or do it in different places. And that's actually, you have infinite decimals between 0 and 1. But that number is clearly, despite being a representation of infinity, the decimals between 0 and 1, it's not as infinite as 0 to infinity or negative infinity to infinity. It's like, it's mathematicians would probably explain it better, but it's fascinating to think about. So you could be held in a type of perfection in heaven and live your life in such a beautiful and peaceful way, but God's always wanting to uplift you.
Yeah.
Kind of to bring another math metaphor, because I know you guys are itching for it. If you're a finite being, we're finite humans, and you put that finite number essentially over the infinite, then you're essentially nothing compared to God. Like if you have the finite divided by infinity, that's essentially nothing. So you always have room to grow. Doesn't matter how good you are and how much you receive of God, you can always keep growing. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. Section 20, maybe. Since caring is love for our neighbor, I need to say what our neighbor is. In an earthly sense, our neighbor is humankind, both collectively and individually. Humankind collectively understood is the church, the country, the community. Humankind individually is understood as fellow citizen, who is the word, is called our brother or our sister or companion. In a spiritual sense, though, our neighbor is whatever is good. And since useful service is good, useful service is our neighbor in a spiritual sense. It is important for everyone to realize that spiritually speaking, useful service is our neighbor. Who actually loves someone simply as someone? No, we love people because of what is within them, what makes them the kind of people they are. That is, we love them for their nature, because that is what each human being is. The quality we love is their usefulness and what we call good. So this is our neighbor. Since the word is the spiritual at heart, this is the meaning of loving your neighbor.
Huh. So I think he does a good job in this section of clarifying what being useful is, because he's not saying useful to me, but I mean, he's talked about it in a few different ways, so he probably has clarified it pretty well, but it's like this being human, this our nature, our beauty, our love and caring and support of each other.
Yeah.
That's what we care about each other. We don't just care about... Now, sometimes we tend to, in this life, in this world right now, where we care about people just for their bodies, but we wouldn't want them to be dead or like just a blow-up doll. Although some people might, unfortunately. But like his point is like the healthier our love, the more we care about people for being people.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I love the way Swedenborg dives into spiritual topics. And it's not just like humankind is X. Humankind has all these definitions and therefore has an even deeper definition for our spirit and what that means to love your neighbor. And I think it's important to, in all spiritual books, to really see not just the surface level of what it's actually saying, but to really dive deep into how this develops my spirit and how I can grow towards God through what I'm learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how it's developing your understanding in your heart. And yeah, so the neighbor being goodness kind of helps to illuminate, okay, so I'm called to care about goodness in people, life in people. Some people would say, okay, neighbor is actually more open than that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at, like, love evil, well, you wouldn't really love evil. You might love a person for being having life within, but you wouldn't love their murderous side, right? Or their whatever side. And I think Jesus makes this clear when he defines neighbor. And we sometimes forget that he does this. Mm-hmm. But in the story of the Good Samaritan, at the end of the story, he doesn't say all of these people were the neighbor. He asks which one was the neighbor. Mm. And it's not the people, in the example, it's not the people passing the person on the road, right?
Yeah.
It's the Good Samaritan who helps.
Yeah.
And I think that helps to clarify that not every part of us is the neighbor that we should love, or every part of every other person.
Yeah.
It's that good in people that we want to uplift and that calls for love and life.
Yeah. That's lovely.
Yeah. So that is faith for today.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you've enjoyed exploring this title with us. You can download Faith on our website at swedenborgiancommunity.org/explore. It's also hopefully in the description, depending on where you're at.
Yes.
Yeah, and so enjoy it. It's a good one to Alyssa's point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. And I look forward to continuing it in our next What is the Word?
Yeah. So join us and be sure to subscribe. Bye, folks.
Bye.